All right, everybody to the Southeastern Region Budget Council meeting. This meeting will be held in person, and it's also been streamed live on YouTube. This public forum allows you to express your opinions and ideas on wildlife management. This RAC considers the feedback on the forest today and enforcement of wildlife. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is in charge of setting wildlife laws. We all have business opinions about what's best for Utah's wildlife. That's why we're here today. We encourage those who want to express their opinions to fill out a comment card. Come back there. Bring on the front. Comments of today's meeting should be focused on topics listed on the agenda. Unrelated topics are should be sent directly to DWR or RAC board members for consideration at another time. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that don't align with their own. Respectful behavior facilitates efficient meetings where RAC members can listen, digest, and address the concerns, ideas, and proposals. Disrespectful behavior will not tolerate unless we best. Lastly, please help reduce distractions during the meeting. And if you need to take a call, we ask that you sit outside. We want to recognize the DWR members who will be sharing with us today. And then we have some of our wildlife board members in attendance. Is with us, and then we have Gary Wilson, Justin Oliver.
Mike Canning says our audio is
horrible. We'll go through and let each one of the RAC members introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Stephen Monticello, and I represent Sporting.
Jake Baldwin, I'm the field manager of Field Monticello Field Officer.
Capstone is our public water and price. Charlie Fisher, Long Island, represent Sporting. Represent the force. Brad Richmond, non-consolidated fair. Okay, and we also have our regional director, Christopher. This time of approve the agenda. Take a motion.
Second Carmen Sunday. They're putting this at 7:20 p.m. So that's going to be straight. The normal majority fee.
So you got the
say 7:20.
Regarding 2025-2027 hunt tables and season dates, there was a motion to ask the division to look at the filing just 12 season dates and hunt structure. And that passed unanimously. There's also a past motion to approve as presented by the division. There was a motion to approve as presented. That passed unanimously. For R657-42 amendments to natural disaster relief, there was a motion to approve as presented. Regarding the CW, there was a motion to present to pass as presented, and that unanimously. And then finally, regarding the Blackhawk CW, there's a motion to pass as recommended, and that actually is. We'll turn this over to Chris for a
Good
sorry about that back and forth. I'm being told that our audio sounds very, you're watching that picture. So I'm trying to get my audio fixed. Good. Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate your volunteering and being here, for your service on the RAC. I know December is busy and evenings are precious, and we're really close to Christmas. So I hope you have a great holiday season. And thanks for sacrificing all
Only
the
getting one feed, so it was garbled.
Thank you. Also, a good regional update. Our aquatic section in the last month has been doing some surveys along the Colorado River, looking for zebra mussels, and all the tests that we took in each option back negative, which is good. Positive tests happened in Colorado, and we're trying to detect those compound strains. So far, the results are not negative. So keep an eye on that. Go to Colorado. So hopefully keep those out of Utah. Our biologists also meet with our partners and terrestrial biologists to create plans for the habitat projects. And just remind you, be careful out there with ice and ice fishing. As you probably know, a lot of the reservoirs that we ice fish on are not ice over yet. The Cleveland Park, I saw them 4 inches out here, so just be careful out there. Start getting some better winter weather, freeze over the streets in this section. How busy is this time of year? WRI ship projects, proposals, and so folks from Forest Service, be around state lands, private landowners, nonprofit groups, you name it, biologists and conservationists and sportsmen are all coming together to propose projects to these regional WRI groups. The deadline is January 9th because progress in the database for July 1. So it's a busy time for that. Start proposals and try to figure out what projects they want to look at.
Oh, she's here in the audience.
Law enforcement is as well, man.
It's muted.
So looking on the fall, and then this is capture season. So
We see it.
captures, we always have safety officers on site assisting us, and so shit their help. They've been busy, but it's been a great opportunity for having distributions. We've completely captured on the sounds, the sounds, and maritime running out of the house, finishing up some observations and geo observations. Dr. Andy Rosie Lynch's in the Pennsylvania area. Species are high elevation birds come winter down North Valley and understand the behavior of the like this. We also mentioned that we did another round of field year meetings in our region. We held a meeting in November, 2 of them, one in Price and one in Miami. First meeting had the Price about 30 people. I think about 12 people. We had the opposite in Miami. The first time we had about 12 people. It was actually Monticello. But we had in Miami, we had 12 people. So we should appreciate the public feedback and thoughts on how we can put it together. It's community community probably in spring or early summer. I think we get some good concrete ideas and proposals together on all kinds of issues, whether it be highway issues, water secondary, searching stuff. We're just glad we're in the areas. And
That was just YouTube.
Bring sportsmen in these areas. Let's have specific ideas on how we can improve things and prepare for that. I was asked by one of our members to how our late season builder house went in the Moab area. And so I thought I had biologists come up and talk about how those things went and what they accomplished our objectives or not. So after Ian gives an update, some questions, I'll be glad to help answer any questions.
with you guys. Yeah, from what I've seen and heard from hunters, they went well this year. We haven't heard back from everybody. They still have a few more days on their mandatory harvest reporting. I've heard back from 4 of the 9 wild hunters, and 3 of those 4 harvested. We got results back. 1 of those bucks did test positive for CWD. We've heard from 11 of the 15 Castle Valley hunters, and all 11 of those are harvested. So things look good. People are happy with them. I'm still waiting on a few more, waiting for CWD results to come. So far, it looks like it was this.
Any other questions about that or anything else?
Okay, I forgot to mention, we have a Christmas gift for you here on the back wall table. So before you leave tonight, grab a Christmas gift. We appreciate your service. All right, thanks, Chris. So we'll move on to the next informational item on the agenda, which is the Utah Cougar update. We'll invite Darren to come up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I am filling in for Chad tonight. Chad scheduled a cruise way in advance, and so I told him I'd be happy to do this. It was a pretty short presentation. I'm sure there'll be some things that folks want to discuss, but I'm happy to answer questions unless you'd like a quick overview.
Yeah, if there's anything you want to clarify from your presentation.
No, not really. Again, I think it was pretty straightforward. Just to try and update folks on what we're seeing data wise with cougars. So
Awesome. Are there questions from the RAC for Darren?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Question I had on the bear survey, the bear presentation, they talked about the data being 2 years behind, just the way you classify the bears. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the same for the lions?
yeah, that's correct. The reason that is, so the way these work, Matt, is we take all the harvest ages and we feed that into a model to try and estimate what the minimum would have had to be in order to support that harvest. But since it's illegal to take kittens, and typically they don't take very many yearlings, if any. Those 2 age groups just aren't really represented in the harvest very well, and so they won't show up until they're 2-year-olds. So it's just difficult it's not a reliable age class, either of those first 2 years to model. So again, that's why it's 2 years behind. We just don't have data on those to bring us up to date. It's always looking back. That model's always going to be looking back.
Thank you.
Other questions from the RAC? Darren, I have a question. So it shows that the lion population is dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's been some major changes in how they're hunted. I'm wondering if some of those metrics are maybe different because of how they're hunted instead of just,
Yeah, so I think Chad had a slide on just methods of take, and it does look like historically hound hunting has been the most successful method to take lions. When we introduced a spot and stock opportunity, and when the legislation changed, allowed for trapping, at first those portions were fairly small, and they've grown over the last 2 or 3 years. As an overall proportion, hound hunting is still by far the most successful, but that as a percentage of the overall harvest, it's declining a little bit. I think we wanted to see how this would all pan out. I think some folks are figuring out those other methods and being more and more successful, but still, using hounds to pursue lions is still always, I think, going to be the most effective way, just because of the nature of mountain lions.
any other questions from the RAC? All right, do we have questions from the audience? Sure, go ahead. Come up, and if you have a question, come up to the mic.
Yeah, so
State your name and who you represent.
Brett Guyman. The first question, I've got a couple of questions. Do you want me to sit down and come up each time?
You can stay up there and
No,
ask
just-
a couple questions.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Just ask. Fire away.
Thanks. So the first question is, I'm wondering if the division can talk or speak to the study that's been talked about over the past couple of RAC meetings.
Yeah, I'm happy to give some background on that. I wasn't part of the planning process, but I could certainly give you an overview. So probably the best place to start on this is there is a state law that requires that the division director take immediate action if we ever see a deer population being impacted by predation. And so it's not the director has to do something. And so what we've noticed we've got more collared deer in Utah than any other state in the West and probably in North America. We've got pretty good data sets on cause of mortality. And what we're starting to see is that if on a unit, adult door mortality to lions was 7% or above, they fell below a threshold where that population could reliably grow. And so these are some good. So we have some units that we're talking about 6. So those conditions are met on more than 6 units, but the 6 will be in the study. So this is Zion, Pine Valley, Monroe, Boulder, East Wasatch, and Stansbury. Did I miss one? I got them all. Okay, good. So all of these fall into that category. We're seeing fairly high doe mortality of the lions. So the director needs to act. And as we discuss these, this question has existed in predator management for years and years and years. And that is it ever top down? In other words, are predators ever the cause of a population struggling to grow? And it looks like some of our data is indicating that on some units. And also, there isn't a whole lot of good data just because we haven't had the collars, we haven't had the technology, we haven't had the money to study that question. And so we thought this would be a good opportunity, since we have to do some management actions on these units, to actually get a definitive answer to what does it look like. Let's do a study, let's get some data, let's figure out if removing cougars at a fairly hard rate, reducing those populations aggressively translates into more deer production. And so there's obviously other factors that enter in. Weather's a big one, but this would be a good question to answer definitively, both in the predator management world and in the big game management world. And so we pursued putting this study together, working with BYU on it. We'll be using some Department of Ag trappers to help us remove lions on those units and try to get aggressive enough that we potentially could see some changes. So that's the idea behind it. We do have some partners, SFW and Wild Sheep Foundation, are helping to fund this, but this is something the division really wanted to know the answer to. It really will help with future management if we can get a good answer to this question. So hopefully, Brad, and I'm happy to talk about anything else you want to know.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the division has quite a few years worth of collar data based on when the mule deer study started or began. So it seems to me, the legislation a few years ago was really hard on lions. Has the division done any kind of study in relation to the data that you already have? It seems like you already have that data, that you're calling this a research project,
right?
And yet you've already got the data that comes in from the mule deer study,
right? We do have some data from the deer side that seems to indicate that yeah, cougars, if they're taking more than 7% of your adult does are impacting that population. The question is, what do you do if that's the case? Can you get in and remove enough lions that changes, or is it perhaps there's a terrain, maybe there's a habitat issue in that you just can't effectively remove enough lions to make a difference. So these are questions we don't know the answer to, and again, we need to make management actions on these units because they fall into those categories, and it'd be good to know one way or the other.
Yeah, and the last question I've got is the study. I I pulled it off of the Watershed Restoration Initiative website. It indicates, it gave two examples of what you're talking about, perhaps some top-down pressure limiting mule deer growth. South Manti and Cache are the two that it listed. You've got enough data now. There are other units that you've identified as above that 7% threshold.
Right.
Is that universally the case that all of those deer herds responded positively in terms of significant growth?
I don't, we're still seeing those numbers, Brett, that those high mortality rates. And so,
But not on every unit. Some of those units have
no.
fallen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's probably,
And the question is for those units, I'll let you answer.
okay.
But for those units who were above the threshold and have fallen below, is there a corresponding increase in the population? Universally.
Yeah, I guess I don't know the specifics of that, Brett. Like, they use Cache and Manti. One of the things we saw in the Manti was that we saw, does in good body condition coming in, but really low survival rates. And they started looking at, when they started getting that cause of mortality, it was really high lion predation. So there's a couple things that have to be true. One is they've got to have the habitat to support them. Once that population gets close to what the range can carry, predator management is not your problem. It's you have more deer than what the land can.
And
so habitat.
And all 6 of these units in the study meet that criteria, because my understanding is a few of those units were due to habitat issues.
I don't know the answer to that, Brett. Yeah, I wasn't part of all those details, so I just don't have that tonight. Sorry.
That's all I've got.
Thanks, Brett. Are there any more questions from the? Go ahead, Cody.
Hey, Cody. Well, Cody Webster. So you mentioned these 6 units. Are there any of these units that have additional studies related to mule deers happening? Like
something that was brought up last night. I think is it Monroe. One or two of them have the restricted weapon, but it's not a study per se. I mean, it kind of is. We're trying a restricted weapon type to see if that can afford additional opportunity by decreasing success rates. In other words, if you're less likely to kill a deer with open sights, again, we're talking about males, which doesn't have a whole lot to do with population growth. As long as you got enough males to do the breeding, your population theoretically should grow. But yeah, is that kind of what you had in mind?
So with that, I mean, this also ties in, but we keep increasing the deer tags on these. And you just mentioned, the males don't grow the population, but lions don't eat bucks. They just eat does.
No, lions will catch and consume deer at the rate they occur on the landscape.
So maybe if we left a few more bucks on the landscape, we'd save some does that way.
I don't know the definitive answer to that. I don't know the definitive, but
I
I would say that they tend to take. So if you have fewer bucks, they're going to take fewer bucks, but they're still going to take those at the percentage that they occur on the landscape. So yeah, theoretically, if you had more bucks, they'd kill more bucks, but yeah.
What about natural / habitat changes on some of these units? Are there some of them that have drastic changes?
That's an important factor. And as I mentioned before, if there's a limiting factor on the habitat side, predator management probably isn't gonna help. So again, I don't know all the details of the study design because I wasn't part of those conversations, but knowing, who's putting it together, I'm sure they've considered it.
So
if habitat's limiting, then.
With the Monroe, I mean, that giant fire, that has a huge chance of changing.
It could be. One thing I'd add is that a lot of times, the year after a fire, actually get a real pulse and growth, and you can actually see a lot of benefit from that. So it could go either way, but yeah.
So with all these other changes, there is chance that we might see something in the data that maybe could be contributed to something else.
Yeah, and all those are things that need to be considered in the analysis. Yeah.
And as of now, the study is listed as a 3-year. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yeah. Typically, we want to do it at least 3 just to get a good data set.
And then what? Do we have a plan of, it did work, it didn't work? What the
Usually,
plan is?
again, I don't know exactly. If it's a 3-year field study, that's typically going to be a PhD level. So it's like a 5-year thing. So they'll collect data for 3. They'll do an analysis over a couple and then publish results. So it does, studies take time. But I'd suspect, again, I don't know for sure, so don't hold me to it. I'm just guessing if it's 3-year field season, then it's probably going to be a 5-year.
Okay.
Overall.
Years ago, there was similar study done with the ochre in the Monroe. Right. I mean, I believe you've discussed with people that, with that study though, they did, the excessive harvest on one and no harvest on the other to see both sides.
Right.
What 6 units are we going to not harvest on to see the full scale?
Yeah, Cody, I don't know which ones they're pairing, but yeah, you want to have some controls so you can, so there are, again, there's 6 units where they're going to do active work, but I think there's 8 or 9 in the state that meet the same criteria. So I suspect those 2 or 3 others are the ones that they're going to use as controls.
Okay, so we're not going to have any that we're going to not
Split in
harvest
half,
lines.
no.
Okay. I'll save the rest for comment.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, coming up, right?
Mr. Chair, can I step in real quick and just, we're kind of dancing around this. I got 2 questions. One, what is the WRI number for this study? And then 2, can we have a little bit of background on what this is, what the hypothesis is, what the objectives are? We're asking a lot of questions. We just haven't
Probably
had-
your best bet's can you guys look up what the WRI number is?
It's 7707.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, and then can we have just a little snippet of what this study is? You've given us a little bit here, some units that you're planning on reducing. It sounds like Lions on, but I think a little more background is going to be a little helpful for us.
I'll tell you what I know. Again, I wasn't in the planning process on this, and so we've got some folks that may know more than I do. But so the idea is we're going to use. There's actually I think a couple of UDAF professional predator specialists, and we're going to have 1 division employee that they're going to focus on these units. They're going to be using, whatever means make the most sense to try to remove as many lions as possible on those units during the 3-year study, and then collect data on their overlap with collared deer. So we'll be looking at the deer side as well. That's kind of it in a nutshell. That's about the limit of my understanding. I haven't seen the study design. I don't know a lot of these. I'm sure it's in the WRI thing, and I apologize that you haven't had a chance to look at that before the meeting.
Okay, yeah, so it's WRI 7707. But we didn't really get an update on this study, so this is.
Yeah, this wasn't on the agenda, but obviously it's a hot topic that's come up during the cycle, so.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like you're trying to remove lines to remove a variable to try and get under that 7% doe predation.
Yeah,
to
those would
see
be 2 of the main things we'd be looking at, right?
if that's a limiting factor in increasing population of.
Exactly.
Okay.
In other words, can you manipulate lion population to address that high doe mortality of lions? And it looks anecdotally, we mentioned the manti, we mentioned the cache. Anecdotally, it looks like once we lowered those populations, we saw the doe survival increase, but there weren't any studies on those units. And so we want to be a little more rigorous and actually throw a grad student at it.
So we're trying to prove a general hypothesis here.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So, sorry, can I ask? So the 6 units that are going to be in the study. Wow. Of the 6 units that are going to be in the study, how many of them are in the southern region? Okay.
Those are good questions. Those are good questions. I'm glad you asked for that clarification because I think a lot of us just have heard about it and kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
bring it out there. So yeah, go ahead, Brett. Or is there any other questions from the RAC while we kind of bounce back to that? All right. Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, sorry to occupy the mic again.
You're fine.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question though. This is a study happening on public land. And I realize that there is, there's always the possibility of something happening, whenever we take animals on the mountain, whether it be houndsmen, whether it be agriculture, really anything. Has the study established any kind of protocols of how you can possibly keep our animals or really sheep, cows, or any other wildlife from inadvertently being caught in those funded by the division snares that are lethal?
Yeah, so like you said, Brad, a lot of times on public land, there's a lot of things going on, bobcat, coyote trapping, and now it's legal to trap lions. And so those things are out there, and that certainly is a risk. And I understand the value of dogs and what they mean to houndsmen. The techniques that they're going to be using are going to be similar to what they would use in a livestock depredation situation where they're trying to capture a lion. So a lot of times it'd be foothold traps and et cetera. And I don't know how often, Phil, they're going to use lethal sets, but I don't know who even can quantify that. But yeah, it certainly is a risk that folks hunting those units may encounter. I don't know if it'll be, is it a higher risk than what you normally would encounter? I don't know. It just depends on where they're working. Typically, they'll work at drainage or something like that.
But there's no identification that maybe those activities are happening in a certain area. I get that it's, they're identified on a unit.
I don't think there's a plan to be real specific about that other than the unit's going to be under the study.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What are you looking? All right. I got one more for you. So is the study proposing to have the trappers focus on just public land, just private land, both?
It'd be the whole unit, but
The whole unit.
obviously, on private, we'd need to have access. I can't tell you what the percentages are on the different units, but yeah.
Okay.
The goal is to try to reduce the cougar populations.
Any more questions from the audience? And then now that the RAC knows a little bit more about this, any more questions from the RAC? Okay, so we don't have any online comments for any of the agenda items tonight. So we'll go right to the comments from the audience, and we'll start with Greg King. So yeah, when you come up, state your name, who you represent. If you're an individual, we ask that you take 3 minutes or less. If you represent an organization, we'll give you up to 5 minutes.
My name is Greg King, and I currently serve as on the board of the Utah Wild Sheep Foundation, and I'm also an avid hunter here in Utah. I've been fortunate to hunt on many of these units and have been very successful, and I appreciate everything that the wildlife community and this RAC does for wildlife in Utah. I am in support of the division and this proposal for this study because I believe it takes us to a point where we can have a decision that is made based on science, that we've done the research and we've done all of the background work for this. I think that it will put us in a situation where we can make good decisions for wildlife going in the future and long term. I also know the risks that are involved. And I think, as an organization, we want to see where the science takes us so that we can feel comfortable with what is taking place. So I'm in favor and endorse this proposal and by the division and this study. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Travis Jensen.
Good evening. My name is Travis Jensen, and I am representing the Utah Wild Sheep Foundation. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the RAC for their volunteer service and the time they put in, and also allowing for public comment on these important issues. Utah Wild Sheep Foundation is supporting the Utah DWR in their predator control study. The predator control study we're supporting will provide the DWR with information directly related to cougar numbers on the landscape and their impact on mule deer and sheep populations. That information can then be utilized by the DWR to make sound management decisions going forward. As a result, Utah Wild Sheep Foundation supports the DWR in their efforts to better understand the impact cougars are having on deer and sheep populations in an effort to more effectively manage those populations in Utah, which is consistent with the language mandated to the DWR by the Utah legislature. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Travis. Jaron Hansen.
I'm Jaron Hansen. I'm the Eastern Regional Manager with Utah Farm Bureau Federation. Just want to thank each and one of you of serving on this board and working with our producers as well. The Utah Farm Bureau supports the division's efforts to work with other organizations to collect more information on the effects of cougars on wildlife and livestock populations in Utah. We feel that accurate data is needed in order to make sound management decisions for predator control, and we're eager to see how reduced cougar populations affect the livestock depredation. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jaron. Kevin Norman.
Kevin Norman representing SFW. In the early 80s, we had 240,000 deer tags. Currently, we are sitting about a third of that at around 80,000. There's definitely factors that are suppressing our deer herd, and we know that lions are one of those. There's some controllable, some not. And so we're very interested in supporting this and putting it to bed if there is much of a deterrent on growing our deer herds as some may think or some may not think. So we're anxiously awaiting, curious to see how this falls and to see if we can get our deer herds back to healthier numbers and anything that we can do to fulfill that mission we're in. So we support this, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thanks, Kim. Let's go, John Bear.
John Bear. I'm just representing myself on this one. I've been to a lot of these meetings on this side of the mic, that side of the mic, board meetings, talked about this for 20 years. And I feel like now everybody's kind of pushed their chips to the middle and went all in to decide on, all right, are lions an issue with the deer? Are they not an issue with the deer? And if we're going to be committed to the study, which I feel like everybody is, we also need to be committed to the result. And if it comes back in 3 or 4 or 5 years and it says lions are an issue, this study might also show us, on some units we can suppress and help the deer herds. Maybe there might be extenuating circumstances on some other units where it doesn't work and it's not the tool we need to use. But I think we all need to be committed to the result. And if it comes back in a few years and shows that, hammering the lions suppressing the lion population doesn't help the deer herd, and we need to look a different direction, then we all need to be ready to embrace that as well. So, like I say, I don't know how many times we've talked about this and had this meeting, and, I know all these hound guys. I like them. I got family that's had hounds. I've had them for years myself. And, I feel for the guys that are in these units. I really do. Because, that's a lifestyle that you're committed to when you have these dogs. But if we're going to have lions, we got to have deer. So hopefully this works out and we all learn a lot and we can better manage deer and lions and make it better for everybody eventually. And one thing that kept coming up last night when I watched some of the meeting was, why didn't this go through the public process? I think it's important that we all realize that the okay for a study doesn't go through the public process, because then it's not a scientific study, it's a social study. And this needs to be 100% scientific. My opinion of what we're going to find or anybody else's opinion can't come into play. It's got the data's got to be able to stand on its own. So I think it's important everybody realize that, you know, if we're going to do a study, it doesn't need necessarily the social side's approval to do it, because then it's not a science study. It's a social study, which we all know is the subject that Scoot excels at in schools. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, John. I've never excelled at any subject. Ben Louder.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ben Lauder, representing the Utah Archery Association. Want to comment on this study as well. There's a lot of opinions and theories. A lot of them are very long-term ingrained about predators, specifically mountain lions, and their impact on wildlife and on you know, domestic animals as well. And I think those opinions and theories probably vary quite a bit, whether you're a deer hunter or a lion hunter or a producer or a rancher. We've got some of the best technology now just in the last decade that we've, you know, better than we've ever had. And there's been some recent studies, you know, a number of them going through BYU with some of this new technology that are kind of calling out some of these theories. The mountain lions are having a bigger impact on deer than we ever imagined. So I think given the technology that we have now, I think it's very appropriate to be doing this study. Also, our deer herds are one of the most valuable resources we have here in Utah, especially when it comes to you know, the hunting public. So Utah Archery Association puts their support behind this study, and we are very interested to learn the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Cody Webster.
First off, I just want to recognize that I know that this is something that you guys can't take action on tonight. It's not an action item, but I think that's part of the problem. You know, I have a lot of respect for John. John mentioned that it needs to be science. The public doesn't need to have the input, but it's the public's wildlife. And what if this was a different species? I mean, there's studies that show that elk hurt deer. What if we decided that we're going to take the beaver, the boulder, the San Juan, the Monroe? We're just going to kill all the elk on them to see if it helps the deer. Would it be the same? Nobody cares. And then I have a hard time with it's just a risk you take on public to have your dog. It's not just houndsmen. It could be a bird hunter. It could be somebody just going for a hike. But we don't tell livestock the same thing, that it's just a risk they take to take their animal and graze it on the public land. We're talking about trying to help the sheep. Why can't we expand the sheep on the South Book Cliffs all the way to the Colorado border? Again, a conflict with the ag, but it's a select group of us houndsmen that we're getting attacked from both of those groups. In 2005, DWR estimated there was 2,500 lions, and now I mean, you can see where we're trending now. They claim that they've changed their metrics for the way they account for it, but then they'll still tell you that their data is probably at least 2 years behind, and they can't account for this or can't account for that. That the average harvest of lions now is 18 months old. That's pretty sad. I mean, especially considering for the first half of that, they're too small to even legally take or hunt for that matter. So that's pretty strong indication that there's not much for decent lions left. And I'm just, I guess, frustrated with the fact that this whole process is frustrating, and it's kind of going away. I've been going to these meetings since I was a little kid, and it's completely changed. You know, we used to be frustrated that the RAC might not listen to us, but now you guys ought to be frustrated. The board doesn't listen to you. They ought to be frustrated that they don't get listened to because the politicians say this is what has to happen. The biologists ought to be frustrated because they get ignored. The whole system is bad, and we need to start making path back towards getting the public process to where it was. I've got 2 young daughters that I'd like to introduce to what I've grown up doing. It's pretty tough to take 2 little girls and keep their excitement lion hunting when you just go days and days and days and days and you don't find anything. It'd be like trying to introduce a kid to elk hunting on the Henrys. It's pretty tough when you can't find anything. So, thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Brett Guyman.
I might have one more question for Darren.
You might be able to talk him into coming back up.
In just a minute, though. So I'm glad to hear John stand up and say at the conclusion of this that we can have it settled and follow the data. I'm a data-driven guy. I like looking at data. I like following data. And I want to preface this statement by saying I don't think houndsmen in general are against reducing lion populations in instances that it's necessary. I know I'm not, absolutely not. I love hunting elk and deer just as much as hunting with hounds, any species. Those of you who know me know that. So my comments are kind of scattered and all over the place, and I apologize for that in advance. When would you say we started kind of down the aggressive road of reducing lions populations? Is it safe to say around 2020?
Yeah, I think that's fair. That corresponded to the legislation that required the director to take. So that's when we did predator management plans on a lot of units and opened those up for unlimited harvest.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sounds about right, Brett.
Okay, great. So I guess my comments are around that. We became aggressive with lions around the year 2020. I pulled up the deer population estimates that the division posts on their website since 2019. They have it listed. The very first unit that it lists is the beaver, and I'm using this as an example. 2019, the beaver had, and somebody might have to hold that for me to see it. The older I get, the worse my vision gets. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, 2019, the beaver showed, I really can't see that, 12,000 deer. 2020, thank you, Eric. Whoa, those are strong. 2019, 12,000 deer. 2020, 10,300. 2020, 21, 9,400. 2022, 9,200. 2023, 9,400. Now, that isn't the case across the board. If you were to do a correlation analysis on that, it's all over the board. Like, it seems that the narrative that some are pushing are that lions are the sole problem we've got with our deer herds. That's not the case. And so as we go through these research projects or look at the data that we have already, we've got, I don't know how many years of collar data that's been collected with cause-specific mortality on each of these units. The answer to my question to Darren earlier on whether or not it's universally applicable that when the cougar mortality is above 7% and you reduce it to below 7% and the deer population response, it's responded well on some units. It hasn't responded well on all units. Deer population are not up significantly on all units that fell below that 7% threshold. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. And so as we review these studies, as we carry these studies out, we need to be cognizant of that. Lions are not the only problem. You have other issues at play. That's going to be a hard thing to look at. Let's look at the statewide data. Statewide, you guys all got the packet in your or the table in your packet showing the reduction in mountain lion populations. Their estimates over the last 5 years. So again, starting in 2019, statewide population was 319,500,000. To the next year, 313,000. The next year, 305,000. The next year, 334,000. And then the latest data they had was 2003. We fell all the way down to 278,000. Now, if I could stand up here and tell you this is having an adverse effect on your deer population. I'm not going to do that because it's more complicated than that. And I hope everybody in the room can acknowledge that as well. Again, I'm not against reducing cougar populations when the data show it's abundantly clear that we need to do that. But on the flip side of that, when it's showing that the cougars are not having an adverse effect on other ungulates, we should probably back off a little bit on harvesting cougars and let other sportsmen enjoy that resource as well. So that's my comments.
All right, thank you, Brett. That's the last of the comment cards. So we'll open it up for comments from the RAC. We already did that. We haven't done that. Okay. Comments from the RAC.
I thought a little bit over the last couple of days about how I wanted to go about the study side of this. I've also thought about how I want to go about the update side of this. I know the update side is one thing. I think we got to separate the two. We have the study issue that's came up. We have the update side that we are here for. As far as the study goes, I wish Dax was here so I could ask him Monroe specific. We have a study from 2013 that was published, peer reviewed, said, hey, lion and killing lions, 50 lions a year does not help the deer population. We have that study. That on top of the huge habitat work that just happened on the Monroe, how are we ever going to tell? Is this we killed a bunch of lions, now we have a bunch of deer, or the unit burn that we just dumped millions and millions of dollars into habitat work? Is that what brought the deer back? I don't see how we can separate those two issues and publish a valid study. I know, Darren, you spoke to it very eloquently, and I appreciate that. I just can't wrap my head around how we will ever go about that. If you'd like.
Yeah, obviously that's all in your study design and I'm sure, we're working with some good folks at BYU and we need to account for those factors. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, if those aren't accounted for, it's going to be really hard to make a good decision about what actually caused it. So, I know these guys, they do really good work and we need to account for that. And I'm sure that they'd be happy if anybody on the RAC or anyone in the public's interested in knowing more details. I'm sure that I'll volunteer Chad to give you some more details. How does that sound? That's what he gets for going away.
Thank you. Again, I think you answered it to the best of your ability earlier, so I appreciate it. As for the update side that we're actually here for, I know I'm new to the RAC. I have been around the predator game for a long time. I'd like to think I have a higher knowledge than a lot of people on predator management and killing predators. I love killing predators, whether it be traps or dogs or calling or spot and stalk. I don't care. I like hunting predators. I've worked with Darren a lot over the last 10 years, 15 years. I've been involved in a lot of the bear studies, lion studies, all the working groups. So I think I have a little bit of a knowledge on this. As far as the update, one thing that has always concerned me, and I've never voiced, and I debated up to this meeting whether I wanted to voice it or not, is when this goes before the legislature, and just like the House bill did, the division has to go testify to. We have this bill that's been pushed through that says, hey, we're going to stop lion hunting in Utah. We can't sustain that. When the division's asked to testify, the fact pattern will be, we have about 1,000. We don't know for sure. The population is declining. Yeah, we're a couple of years behind. Here's why, which I don't, your numbers are spot on as far as why the numbers are a couple of years behind. But we don't know how many we have. We're 2 years behind on a population estimate. We just did the study that we killed roughly, it's only 6 units, but we took all the lions we could, which is probably going to be about 200-ish if my math works out halfway right. So we get down to about 800 lions. I don't want the sport that I love so much to be presented to the legislature that way when it comes time to decide if we hunt lions in the future or not. And I would just implore with the division, figure out some way that when this comes up, because it's going to, we have a better answer than I think about roughly 1,000. Yeah, the population is going downhill. It has been for the last 10 years. And it's just continued to drop. All I got about that.
Thanks, Matt. More comments from the RAC.
Well, this isn't an action item. It is good to know that this study is out. It looks like just from a little bit of Googling, fiscal year 2026. So the current fiscal year we're in right now. So I got a lot more questions about it, but it doesn't sound like we'll have the answers, like what time of year we're planning on doing this. The legislature put through that we have unlimited amount of lion killing. So there's no real taking a unit and stopping on a unit or adding more to a unit. Otherwise, I would say, why are we using government trappers? But that's pretty much the only tool that DWR has to try and implement this study. Yeah, but with that, like you said there, Max, or is it Max? Sorry. Yeah. Matt. Sorry, Matt. Yeah. There's not going to be, I don't think the legislature is going to flip and say, we're not going to kill lions because they just said, kill as many as you can. And I think that's the problem with this current public process is when it goes to the legislature, it doesn't go through the public process like we're used to seeing it. And then we make ballot box biology happen, which is an issue. But as for the study, there's really sitting at this table, there's not much we can do about it, pro or against it. We're just not able to change that.
This isn't an action item, but I'll just echo a little bit about what Matt said. We have a very big hoofed animal that runs all over our landscape, and we have almost zero control over what happens to it. And it's because certain groups get involved and tie our hands. You want to take a species that's also running around on the landscape and declare an open season on it. That is a short-term run before you end up right in the same place, or people will fight you tooth and nail to keep you from wiping something out, and then you lose all control over being able to manage it, which is what our wildlife should be about, is management. And so with management, we don't clear things out just because we don't like them. We find a way to balance the needs of everyone. And so I hope for a good study, but even if the study says kill lions to build deer, to what end and for how long before that management's taken out of your control? So there has to be some sort of space on the landscape for everyone. And we have to show a good faith effort that we are managing wildlife, not just declaring an open season on them.
Any more comments from the RAC? I just say there's a lot of money and effort that goes into collaring these deer. We're getting a lot of data from it. I think it's a good idea to at least look at what one of these data points can do. I'm with Brett and John, who spoke to this. If it shows that it's not going to affect it, then we have to react the right way. And if it shows that it is going to make a big effect on the deer herd, then we decide what we want to do with it going forward. But at least we'll know for sure. If there's no other comments, and seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Darren, come on up. That item is the Utah fur bearer update.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for their comments. I know we weren't voting on this tonight, but you know, our board members are here, and I'm sure they appreciate the comments too. I know I do. Yeah, for fur bearers, this is really, I think it's informational too, and basically we're just adjusting dates based on the calendar within the 3-year cycle, and just updating the 26-27 Bobcat season parameters. So it basically, we're allowing the maximum opportunity that the plan calls out. So 6 permits per individual. The full season, November 18th through March 1st, and there'll be no overall cap on permits. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right, thanks, Darren. Questions from the RAC?
Yeah, I have some questions, and I mean, we kind of got off topic on the other one, but this will stay on topic, but not bobcats.
Okay.
So I've just started this trapping journey of mine and looking at the guidebook, and there's a lot of restrictions for this northern river otter. I tried to bring up the current management plan. The closest one I could find was 2020. Has there been another management plan for river otters?
So that falls under our native species program, but I don't think that that's been updated since then. I know we put some efforts into trying to do working with anglers to try and get a feel for where people were seeing otters. I know they did that fairly recently, but I think that's been the most recent thing. And I know they do a rotation of species monitoring, and unfortunately that's another program, and so I don't know if I know all the details or the cycle, or even if otters are one of the ones they look at. So yeah, sorry, I wish I had more.
Okay, yeah, no, I bring it up because they're pretty heavy restrictions for water trapping, and then also fur bearers within 600 yards of a lot of the rivers that fall within eastern Utah and southern Utah.
Right.
And then going through here, I see they were considered rare in 1899, and they haven't been changed since. I mean, they got changed to a sensitive species. I see the only way to really, I don't see a population objective in here for them to really bring those trapping methods back to Utah trappers. I also don't see, I mean, there are some reintroductions, but I don't see a good way to collect population. I mean, I see that we're able to email the DWR if you see a river otter, but not really. So to me, it seems like there's some room here for improvement. I mean, obviously a new management plan would be great. Some population objectives would be great. I know trappers have been probably swallowing this for a long time just because they don't like to rock the boat, but 600 yards within these major river systems ends up being miles and miles and miles of untrapped coyotes, untrapped beavers, a bunch of different methods. Is there any push to change those regulations, or to at least update the management plan so we have objectives that we can accomplish?
We have had conversations with the Trappers Association on that, and some of the angler outreach was an attempt to start looking at some of that information. I'll happily and we'll pass along your comments to our coordinator over that program, and I'm sure she'll see the RAC too, but that's about all I can promise right now.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring it up. It seems like it's time to reevaluate a bit of that.
Yeah, and it may be in the docket, I don't know.
With bobcat tags being unlimited,
Mm-hmm.
is there any reason that we couldn't sell those to licensed vendors? So when I forget to apply for my bobcat tags, I can go to Walmart and buy one and go hunt.
I don't know the answer to that, Matt. I can certainly ask Lindy. I'm sure that there's a reason if we don't do it now, but maybe we can look at that. I'll ask Lindy what the nuts. Well, actually, I'll have Chad. I keep forgetting. I didn't need to stay in my lane, but yeah, we can certainly raise that.
Any more questions from the RAC? All right, questions from the audience. Okay, we'll move on to comments from the audience, starting with Cody.
So I know this was brought up last night, and it's whether we can do anything about it or not, but currently for somebody with hounds to hunt bobcat, you have to go through the fur bearer course, which is largely directed towards trapping. but we don't have to have any course for trapping lions. We don't have. And what I would ask and what I'd like to see is we can make it somewhat more consistent. And I'm not saying one way or the other is right, but I'm feeding a pack of dogs. Bobcats have always been trash to me. I don't chase bobcats, but I've got to justify having the dogs. So I may want to. Why do I have to take a trapping course to pursue bobcats with my dogs? Can we somehow fix that system?
Thanks, Cody. Corey Farnsworth.
Corey Farnsworth, representing the Utah Trappers Association. I like that you brought that up. I personally, and the association also believes that anyone who's trapping should be able to take that trapping course. I just think that's good to do. If someone's targeting cougars and they're trapping, they're also going to catch other animals. I think that's a good thing to have. And then I was teaching a trapper's course, and that came up. I was a houndsman, and he's like not interested in any of the trapping stuff. So I do think that something separate would be beneficial. I also want to add that, I get an occasional deer, but trapping is my thing. And I really support anyone else, how they recreate on our landscape, whether that's bicycles, taking a picture, houndsmen. And I just really am grateful for the privilege to trap. And we support the division's recommendations on those.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, I think that's the last of the comments. Comments from the RAC.
Well, I brought this up, but I would like to see this Northern River Otter Management Plan become more bulky with some more attainable objectives. Just reading through this, I don't know that you guys probably have had the time but there's no population objectives in here. It seems like it's just kind of willy-nilly, and it's been that way for 100 and some years. So I think it's time to really take a hard look at that and say, is trapping really the issue with otters here in Utah, or is it population? Is it habitat? Is it tamarisk? Is it what's going on here? I think it's time to start looking at that, especially when our other states around us not only allow otter trapping, but allow like drowning sets, snares, things like that for beaver. I think it's time to look at that.
Any more comments from the RAC?
I just got a question. I need to clarify something that Mr. Webster said about, so if you're trapping lions, you do not have to take the fur bearer course? Is that right? Am I understanding that right?
That's correct. And that stems from the legislation. And so again, the fur bearer requirement for bobcats and other fur bearer species, that's in code. That would have to change the legislative level to change that requirement. So if you're taking that species, you're required to have that permit. Lions aren't fur bearers, and they hadn't traditionally been trapped, but when that legislation changed and allowed for trapping, it didn't also require the fur bearer permit. So that's kind of where we are now, just FYI.
But you need a registration number
For
on
a
your
trap, yeah.
So then
there's two things. You need to, if you're going to put a trap in the ground, you have to have a registration number, and that's a one-time license. You get that once in your lifetime. That's all you need. But in order to take the animals that are considered fur bearers under Utah's regulations, you also need to have a fur bearer license. And again, lions are not fur bearers, and so they fall outside of that requirement in code. And that was not a requirement that the legislature included when they included trapping for lions. So just to clarify kind of how the law is working.
Absolutely. Come on up. Say your name for those of us who don't know who you are.
Eric Luke. I am a certified fur harvester education instructor. And as Cody mentioned, I do have some of the people that take class are houndsmen, simply so they can do that. the class is not necessarily a trapping class. It's called a fur harvester education class, but it is geared toward trapping. But there are a lot of the people who need to take that simply are houndsmen who have zero interest in trapping, only chasing, with their hounds. So I don't know if that's something that could be looked at, but that's kind of the gist of it. So.
Thanks, Eric. Any other comments from the RAC? We'll move on to the first action item, Utah black bear recommendations.
So
it's already in place. All right.
Black Bear is on a 3-year cycle. I brought permits and season dates last year, and so the bulk of this presentation revolves around a recommendation in this region, and that is to change some hunt boundaries on the Dolores Triangle to take the triangle out of the LaSalle Mountain unit and treat that as a separate unit with 10 additional permits. Region can speak to the details, but the gist is that we're not seeing a lot of harvest in that triangle, in the Dolores Triangle area. Most of it's occurring on the LaSalles to the south. And the region felt like there was an opportunity on the mountain that wasn't being taken advantage of, and wanted to sort of split hunters up and maybe target that area as well. So that's it in a nutshell. And obviously, if you have questions, we were in the right place to get some answers to them.
I'll say any questions from the RAC.
I just one quick question. I'm assuming that those bears are just like the deer. They're probably an issue of crossing back and forth into Colorado. Is that something that you had to juggle, or?
I'm guessing. Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but when we look at collared bears, yeah, they don't know that there's a border there, so they do move back and forth. And I see Dustin's coming up, so I'm going to let him address some of the
Get him
specific.
up here.
Yeah.
Ask him a tough question. Besides
Yeah,
that.
right. Don't let him get away with easy. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so one other thing with this also, before I forget, is was trying to, so with our deer plans that just went through this last session, we took the Dolores Triangle and it's its own unit now, separate from the LaSalles. And that's because it is its own unit. Those deer we've never documented really anything crossing. It's kind of its own unit, and most of those are Colorado anyway. And so we're trying to get everything consistent that way. So we figured when we changed that for the big game, we'd change it for bear also. We wanted to last year. We were a little late on it, but thought that this was a good time to do that so that things are consistent for sportsmen. What else you got?
That's it.
Move back. Yes, I mean, some bears will go back and forth across that river, but it's not that many that we know of. Like I say, most of them are Colorados that move from the border over anyway.
Yeah, not a concern. I was just curious more than anything. Thank you.
How many bears are usually harvested within the Dolores Triangle area?
So since 2020 or 2001, 5 have been in the last 5 years. We've had 2. Those were in 2023 and 2024, 1 each in those years. It's just, yeah, nobody hardly goes out there to hunt.
Yeah. Is there sign that there are more bears there? I mean, or is it just like one of those units where you're like, well, if you put in for it, kind of good luck,
There's bears there. Yeah.
Okay. And then I know Colorado doesn't allow dog hunting. Obviously, we hunt with dogs on LaSalle, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Yeah, so it's kind of been the same of what it is. The same thing on San Juan and that. We're right up on the border, so it's kind of the status quo.
Any more questions from the RAC? All right, questions from the audience? Okay, we'll move on to comments from the audience, and Cody Webster first.
So I realize that this isn't a year in the 3-year cycle that we should be adjusting, recommending tag numbers, units, all that, but we are. So for myself, representing myself, somebody that spends a lot of time on the book cliffs, I would like to look at being taken to move some of the Bitter Creek tags into the Little Creek. I mean, I would love to see less tags on the Bitter Creek. I realize asking for less bear tags is like asking for not killing lions. It is what it is. But there's a lot of bears in the Little Creek. There's not hardly any pressure in there. It's opened up a little bit to hound hunting now, but it's still logistically, it's very, very tough to do it. I mean, between weather and access and the tribal access and that kind of stuff. So there's very little pressure for Little Creek. There's a lot of bears in there. I would probably say it's as much as anywhere LaSalle's in the state as far as bear density. It's to the point that they are, you know, getting into people's camps. They're not afraid of humans because they don't have the dog aspect. But there's not the bears in the Bitter Creek because that's where all the pressure is. So if we could move some of the tags to the Little Creek, 5, 10 tags, maybe try to put more pressure in there in the roadless, push some of them back. We still take our bears off of that mountain, you know, for the deer and the elk and all that, but let's just focus where the bears are. Thanks.
Thanks, Cody. John Bear.
John Bear, representing SFW on this one. We support the division's recommendation with one little caveat. My wife won't get off my case about, and that is that some of these units you have over-the-counter tags, but we got to wait till like July to hunt them. That sucks. I mean, we need a couple, even if it's on a quota, put a couple tags on these units like the Nebo right there where we live, or on the Manti where you can hunt them early in the spring. If you put a small quota on there, but that's fine, but at least give people the opportunity to get out of the house and go glass up a bear. You ain't gonna find a lot of them. And I happen to be married to the most bear hunting addicted woman on the planet, and so I told her I'd bring that up, and if you'd all address that, you'd make my drive home a lot nicer. So I appreciate it.
John, is that SFW's official stance?
Yes.
Perfect. Ben Louder.
Ben Louder, representing Utah Archery Association. We support the recommendations as presented. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ben. Comments from the RAC? Go ahead, Matt.
I promise I won't talk this much on any of the deer and elk stuff.
Hey, man, we like your knowledge. Go ahead.
So to both Cody and John, the division's answer to that is going to be, sorry, we're on a 3-year plan. Come back when the plan's open. That has historically been the answer to anything that comes up during the plan. I personally worked with Darren to push the plan through. We put a ton of work into that, and I would love to see it actually be a 3-year plan. We're not changing anything until the plan is up. That has always been the division stance when anyone outside of the division wants to make any changes.
Thanks, Matt.
Can I ask a question? Darren, why hasn't Utah leaned into a spring spot and stock bear hunt like a lot of other states? I know that's when we let the houndsmen out, but why has Utah chosen to go that route?
When we last reviewed the plan, there's some specific things that Director Shirley wanted us to look at. One of those is try to avoid overlap between hunt types that might cause difficulty for law enforcement to determine. So, if you've got a spot and stock tag, but you're out during a hound season, is there a problem there? I don't know that I know the answer to that. And I don't think we talked about that specifically in the plan. I'm of two minds. One is, we're all adults, let's make sure we play by the rules. I agree with Matt. My preference would be to address this when we do recommendations at the end of the cycle, but we are asking you to change some boundaries, and so it's fair to bring it up. And obviously, if the board wants to address some of this stuff, they certainly can. But we'd have to think about it. I think cash is maybe the quick answer right now. If this gets it's been brought up before, and I believe it passed, so I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, we certainly think about it.
Yeah, I want to be clear, I'm pretty in support of, let's stick with the plan while we have it. One thing though, and I know it's hard to have things come on and off and things like that, but when the houndsmen are out having spot and stock hunters out, and I don't know how much conflict there would be there. You could ask those groups what they'd feel. I mean, it's one thing when we're running baits and you want to do a spot and stock hunt. That's a different problem.
Yeah, no good.
Right. But so, maybe we can have springtime. If it's harvest objective, it's harvest objective. So we kill them in the spring, we kill them in the summer, we kill them in the fall.
I think the last time this was discussed in the rack, in one of the other racks, it was if you're interested in pursuing it, was put on recommend as an action log item to have the division look at, maybe talk to some of these groups and get some feedback. But you can do whatever you want, obviously.
Anybody else have comments? Now that you brought that up, they had one other recommendation to look at as an action log item. And that was to allow somebody who's drawn a tag to also hold the harvest spot and stock tag later.
So an additional tag.
Yeah.
That would require a rule change. And I believe it was the Northern region voted to put that concept on as an action log to ask the board to do that. So yeah, that did come up as well.
Awesome. All right, any more comments from the RAC? Well, let's talk about some motions then.
I would make a motion that we stay status quo until the plan reopens and revisit it then. For the record, when it does reopen, I'm 100% in support of it.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Matt and a second by Brad. We're all here, so all in favor?
Oh, can I ask a question on the
Oh, sure,
motion?
yeah, sorry. Let's have some
I just want to
discussion.
be clear. Is your motion to accept the recommendations as presented?
No, keep it as status quo until the plan.
Okay, so you're saying don't make a boundary change on the LaSalle's.
Correct.
Okay, I want to make that clear. All right.
No, that's good. Thanks for keeping me in line. So let's do a vote by raise of hands. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Got 1, 2. All right. Those opposed? The rest. What's the math on that? 2 to 5? Is that correct? Okay.
Did we get the second one?
We did. Yeah, it was Brad. Yep. So motion fails 2 to 5. Any other motions?
I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Charles and a second by Steve. Those in favor, raise your hand. Got 5 in favor. Those opposed, raise your hand. 5 to 2. Any additional clarification other than what's already been stated? Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item.
It should be predator control incentives, right? Okay. So we always, the division, our policy is always is that location data is protected. We noticed in the current coyote incentive rule that you could potentially argue that kind of those locations where people are taking those coyotes should be subject to public information request. We just want to make sure we're consistent across the board, that we don't share specific location data, whether that's collar data or harvest data, location data, those kinds of things, just to protect hunters and to make sure that there's that people can have confidence as they interact with us, that we're not going to reveal their hunting areas or their trapping sites, those kinds of things. So we do provide an annual report that gives a heat map so people can kind of get a gist of where the hot spots are, but we don't want to reveal targeted. So again, this is just a tweak to the rule to make sure that that's clear.
Thanks, Darren. Any questions from the RAC? Questions from the audience? Okay, we do have one comment card from Corey Farnsworth.
Corey Farnsworth, Utah Trappers Association. We think that's a really good move, especially with publicity, and just protecting trappers and protecting trappers, other trappers and trappers, stopping, I'm horrible with words today, stopping or conflict between other trappers if they got a hold of that data.
All right, thanks, Corey. Comments from the RAC? Okay, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Cash and a second by Charles. Those in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. All right, and now the last item on the agenda. This is the one that's actually meant for you, right, Darren? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I keep messing up. That was just a dumb joke. We won't worry about repeating it. I'm gonna share something here really quick, just so that it's easier to explain. Let me just bring that up. So what we're, let's see. Try and get this to present so everybody can see it. Okay. So in the current, the draft rule language, we're recommending one small but significant change, and that is, you can see the words in red when we're defining cleared and planted land. In the current packet, it says cultivated crop is routinely irrigated or routinely, sorry, I guess something on in front of this, mechanically or manually harvested. We want to change that or to an and that is to be consistent with how we define cleared and planted land in our other rules. So that was just an oversight when we drafted this. We just want to make sure we're consistent across our different rules. So other than that, I'm happy to take questions. I think it's a fairly short rule, and I'm happy to clarify anything.
All right, questions from the RAC?
So am I understanding that right on that second paragraph? So that doesn't apply to like dryland farm stuff, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
If there's no more questions from the RAC.
I'm sorry, Scoot. Unfortunately for you, Darren, and probably everyone in the room, I do have a few questions.
Okay, no, you're good.
I listened to your presentation, went over it. Yes, in your presentation, you started it out by talking about a conservation lease as a way to address depredation issues. And I felt like one of the arguments made was that a depredation lease and the depredation how about this? The argument was made the depredation program isn't very proactive, right? It's very reactive program.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So can you help me understand why conservation lease agreements have to be reactive? Why can't we be proactive with our conservation lease?
We could theoretically. There's a couple of reasons why. First of all, when we looked at it, there are probably some instances where we'd want to do this outside of the depredation program.
Okay.
And so we wanted a separate rule for that reason. The other real big advantage is that if we're doing that for a population management level, we qualify for federal funding. And so we could use PR, Pittman Robertson dollars for some of these leases. And so again, that opens up potentially some funding sources for this. And again, it needs to pass the straight face test, and we need to make sure that it's in the grant and the rest, and that'll all be true. So this might pertain to someone who's had past depredation damage, and we're going to say, hey, instead of giving you doe tags moving forward or paying you every year, what if we set up an agreement and we'll pay you this much every year for 6 years, we'll review it after 3, and do that on a more proactive basis. And so look at who our landowners are, who we're working with. We may have landowners, and we do in some regions, that just don't complain, but they're providing a valuable resource for deer and turkeys and this includes all big game, but you know, deer's sort of the focus at the moment. You know, why shouldn't we be able to come to an agreement with them and actually give them some benefit from what, you know, they're doing it for free, but let's recognize what they're doing, and if it's valuable for deer management, let's look at those two. So we're planning on doing a couple pilot areas, southern region, northeastern region to begin with, if this passes, you know, if the board passes it. And there will be a policy attached to this that's a little bit more specific about how those monies can be spent and how do you calculate the value. But yeah, that's why we wanted to get it out of the depredation process altogether.
Okay, so if I feel like I understood you right there, I mean, you list a lot of things, but maybe one of the main ideas here is that if we change it from depredation over to wildlife management, there's a funding resource that opens up for you. Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah. Okay. So just out of curiosity then, was there any discussion about changing the rule around a conservation lease so that it sounds more like wildlife management instead of depredation?
Yeah, I'm open to, you know, if you've got some concerns about the language here, but it's a pretty short rule. So.
It is a short rule, but I do think I have some concerns with it. I mean, I think it's already been mentioned that we're going to have some internal policies that are going to dictate how dollars get spent. I would have probably liked to seen that written in rule, and I know you guys want a little more flexibility, but and where it sounds like we're going to tap into some dollars, to federal dollars, to spend on these projects, but this rule to me isn't written like a grant. It's not written like, hey, producers, we have a program that's well funded, and if you want to get paid to have wildlife on your property, fill out a project proposal and submit it to us, and then we have a selection criteria that we follow to determine who gets ranked where and where we spend our money, right?
And we specifically don't want to do that.
Okay, walk me through that a little bit.
We want to initiate these, so this will be initiated by the division. We'll look at our landowners, our you know, growers, and we want the flexibility to be able to make the decision about who we approach and how we work out agreements with that. We don't want to, it isn't the grant process. That's not the intent.
Right. So I guess let me ask you this then. So again, without it defined in rule or a selection criteria, if someone approaches you, how do you justify if you want to say no?
Yeah, we'll have to document that. You know, there could be reasons why, you know, maybe they aren't, you know, they think they've got a valuable piece, but in the big picture, we feel differently. Maybe yeah, I mean, there might be reasons that we would say no. And I think, you know, just to make sure that we're transparent, I think we need to, hey, we were approached by this person. These are the reasons why we didn't opt in to do it here.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that's the thing with the transparency on one side or the other, right? Like, if I know this guy got selected over me, at least if there was a selection criteria, I understand why, right? Or if there is no application process, it's just you guys approach and you make a deal. Where is the transparency there to say, hey, regional RAC, reason why we cut a deal with this farmer over here is because we felt like it accomplished these goals on this unit, right?
Right.
I don't see a process set up in here for to keep us or the public informed on why the dollars are being spent where they are.
Yeah. So obviously we'll keep records, and our records are subject to you know, grandma. So,
Right.
but I believe it was the northern region on this as well, you know, suggested that we have a formal process that we bring back, and at least to begin with, report back to the RACs and the board. And I'm sure we're open to that.
Yeah, and I think another thing, just talking about wanting to try to help the division out and having a little more transparency, you know, there's no criteria set forth in here about what a crop is worth. Are we going to pay the going rate this year, or 3-year average? No, this piece of land is highly valuable to us as a division because we're trying to get someone on this, so we're willing to pay more. And then if I'm the guy on the other unit, well, why was he paid X amount and I'm only paid this amount?
Yeah. So the way that this will work, we'll have the overrule that basically allows us to do these agreements, and then we'll have a policy that puts out sideboards. We've already started drafting that. Some of the concepts would be, we'll do it on a case by case basis, but for example, we could look, how many deer are they harboring? How much feed are they using? And then to be honest, sometimes it's a negotiation process. It might be, well, what would it take for us to do this? And then we need to decide if it's worth it. Both sides need to decide. And we'd like to have that flexibility. This is obviously going to be an adaptive process. And so and that's why we're going to do it on a couple of test areas first, just kind of see how this goes and what this looks like. And I think that we'll be able to put some more flesh on the bones as we move forward if we need to. So that's the process. And then there will be a contract, an agreement that both parties sign, and that'll spell out the details. This is why we're doing this. These are the understandings. This is the payment, et cetera. So that should be how it looks. And again, if the RAC and the board would like us to come back and report on how that's going on, we're happy to do it.
Okay.
Well, I got a question. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Yeah, but I've asked a couple, so we can come back to me. Go ahead, Charles.
I got a question on why this is just big game in turkey. We know that pheasant numbers obviously are extremely down in the state, and we could be paying landowners to not plant crops and to not cut straight to fence lines and bring up pheasant populations, as well as mountain properties. We know early seral stages of aspen stands support ruffed grouse better than anything else. So why are we limiting this to big game and turkey?
At this point, again, with the new program, we want to kind of start with a couple of things and then potentially, I could see that potentially being something that might get added later. But at this point, we're not recommending that. Doesn't mean that you couldn't move that, but.
Okay, I just see more bang for our buck out of those species than I do paying for elk eating corn and.
Yeah, I don't think elk are probably gonna ever be something that we're looking at on this. It's going to be mainly focused on deer to begin with, but I could conceivably see pronghorn bison or something like that. But and pheasants is not a bad idea.
Okay, so in the rule it states that there'll be a mid-contract review, which is great, to make sure that you're meeting the intended goals and objectives. I guess one question that I was left with reading this again was, what if we're not? We get 3 years into it. You know what? Either we don't need this anymore because we've accomplished our goals, which would be great,
right?
Or we just found that it's not as productive. I didn't see an exit strategy in here for either the division or the producer if they wanted to get out.
That'd be captured in the actual agreement that's signed by both parties. So typically, we'd put a clause in about if either party decides that they're no longer interested, that they can. It's similar to our CWMU COR, so that's where that would live.
Okay. And then one of the stated results that's supposed to come, it says increased hunter opportunities, but it didn't really again give a box for us or sideboards to capture if we've increased hunter opportunities or what our vision is for that. So I was wondering if you could speak to that a little.
I think the overarching goal is to see if we can't augment populations. And, we talked about predators earlier. This is just another tool in the toolbox to potentially do that. So, we've had areas in the state where, we're killing 90 does in a drainage a year because of depredation issues. And that could be significant, right? So that's kind of the seed that started the thinking on, maybe there's some other ways we can tackle this rather than just coming in after the fact or issuing doe tags, et cetera. And the same for turkeys. We move a lot of turkeys or we discourage them. So yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking. I think I lost track of your question. Did I answer it?
No, you got it. Yeah.
Sorry, Cash.
Yeah, you got it. No, that's perfect. So, and then I think you answered the other questions I had with your clarification on the rule. And so it wouldn't appear to me as the rule's written, we already talked about dry land, but things like pasture grass, where we're just growing grass for grazing, and then maybe more in general, rangeland, private ground that's rangeland, that those didn't fall into this, that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think, again, this is just like, let's start at this.
Yeah.
And then maybe if it makes sense, we expand it later. But right now we're looking at, you know, typically that's where we have the most conflict, is where people are actively growing something. That's not to say we don't have equal conflict, and it's usually with elk, to be honest, on those other things. But right now, this is where we want to start, and this, I'm sure this will change as we move forward and learn.
Thank you.
Can landowners take advantage of this and the walk-in access program?
I'm trying to remember. Usually, I think what we did is preclude any, if they're part of any other program, they wouldn't qualify. But I don't remember if we listed walking access. Let me just look at the language here really quick. So they can't be a CWMU. They can't participate in depredation programs. So this would be in lieu of that. It doesn't say walking access. So I guess the way the rule's written, it wouldn't necessarily preclude it, but I don't know that, you know, it's kind of a separate program. And
Well, it just seems to me that spending public dollars on private ground, if we could try and include some of these properties, or at least talk to these landowners about including these properties in the walk-in access program, I think would be great for the public.
Yeah. Thanks for that comment. I appreciate it.
More questions from the RAC? Questions from the audience? All right, we have a couple comment cards for this one. We'll first hear from Jaron Hansen.
Jaron Hansen, representing Utah Farm Bureau. Utah is growing fast, and wildlife conflicts are becoming more common. The Utah Farm Bureau supports this program and appreciates the division's forward-thinking approach to partnering with Utah landowners to support wildlife. To kind of talk to the flexibility aspect of this that I think the division is trying to get at, we actually see it as, well, you know, I might not plant that same crop 3 years in a row. You know, things change. The drought is, you know, is another factor. You know, as it goes up and down, you know, we more appreciate that. You know, there's been several conversations that I've been in that a lot of our producers are like, yeah, the DNR has never really been proactive in wanting to work with us, and we feel like this is a huge step for us of, you know, coming together and working together, because there, like you mentioned, we have a lot of producers that they just shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, it is what it is. You know, we have big game eating my crop down, but that's, you know, that's just part of life. And now they're getting compensated for it. And so I do agree that we'd like to see a little, you know, transparency. That'd be great. But, you know, that depends on the producer, and depends on, you know, what they're growing and the crop price for that year. And that, you know, that all changes. It's all real fluid. And so we just really appreciate all of you in the DNR wanting to come and work together with our landowners, our producers. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jaron. Kevin Norman.
Kevin Norman, representing SFW. You know, I've been in a lot of these meetings when we talk about depredation doe permits and everybody loses their mind. I've been one of them, and it's pretty neat to see that we're finally maybe going to compensate these guys in lieu of depredation doe tags and turkeys, and can help grow our population, just like stated earlier with the lions. And, you know, another piece of the puzzle to grow our deer herds, and instead of depredating those does, now we got other options. Also, you know, we have confidence that the division has the track record of knowing where these areas are and where the monies can best be spent, and to get our most bang for our buck. So we support this program for sure, and hope you guys do too. Thanks for your time.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Any comments from the RAC?
I would just say it sounded like this is a pilot program. I'm again going to defend the dryland farmers in San Juan County that do dryland alfalfa and have lots of deer on them and lots of depredation historically. And so I'm assuming that if it works down the road, there might be questions about changing that language or consideration. I don't know.
Our bottom line is, let's try and grow these deer herds. And so, you know, if it makes sense, I'm sure we could take a look at that too. But again, start small and let it and see where we need to go.
I think anytime you start talking farmland and start talking wild game and you're not including pheasants in the conversation, you're missing a big portion of what you should be talking about. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
I think for me, overall, I'm really uncomfortable with this rule change. It seems way too broad, not clear enough about what we will and won't do. And honestly, in a lot of ways, I feel like the division has brought around to the RACs a blank check and said, let's run this through. And I'm really uncomfortable with that. And I would like to see better controls for the division to get in and out of agreements that aren't working. I'd like to see better controls for producers to get in and out of deals that aren't working. I'd like a heck of a lot more transparency on what we're paying for. And then also some sort of a way to determine if we're getting something from it, right? Like, let's just do a hypothetical and let's say we go into one unit and we drop $200,000 on these leases. How many more fawns or how many more does live because of it? You know, what are we going to be able to show at the end for our dollars? There's a lot of programs that the state funds these days where we throw a lot of dollars at a problem, and at the end we say, okay, well, like for example, is we moved so many acre feet down to the Great Salt Lake. Well, how much did we spend to get it there? It's great that we got it there. How much did we spend to get it there? How expensive is that? Same thing with this. Like, don't get me wrong, I want to grow deer the same as anyone else, but I know it's a pilot program, but I have no idea what the funding is for this. We talked a little bit about it. Is that a bottomless pit that we're going to set up a certain amount? We're going to spend it each year till it's gone, or are we going to keep dipping into the pot? And then my question is would those dollars have gone to another project, and would have that made us more deer? Or would it not? Maybe this is the most beneficial way to do it. But I don't feel like there's anything set up in this rule for a sideboard on us trying to figure out what we're getting out of it, what we're spending our dollars on. You know, we're going to do this big study to figure out if killing cougars builds us deer. Does really paying farmers to let deer be on their land grow us more deer? How are we going to know that? I don't see any of that in here. And then just on the higher level, there are 7 different ways that private landowners in the state can get permits, not lose any points, and in some cases are guaranteed issued. Some of those programs are run by the division. Some of them are codified in law. And what I feel like we're bringing around with this is, even though private landowners can have access to these permits and hunt as they please, we'll also pay for the wildlife to be on their property that they're shooting at. That's a struggle for me. You already get to do it without losing points, without incurring a waiting period, and now we'll pay you to have them there. That's really hard for me. So if the division came back through with a rule that was a little more clear to me, with a little more stronger sideboards, maybe. But as it's written today, I don't think I could vote for it. And on top of that, I don't even think I could sit here and ask for this or that or this or that and get us there. I don't think I can work with what we got here. But having said all that, I'm still in support of trying to grow deer. So this is an idea to grow deer. I'm not for this one, but maybe I'll be for the next one.
Anybody else have comments? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Come on up to the mic.
Not trying to sway votes or anything. Corey Farnsworth. My father had a 500-acre ranch on the LaSalle's. About 2000 or so, they decided to fence it. They were consistently having 400 plus deer, 200 plus elk every day out on the hayfield. Now, my dad, his stance on that was that if you're paying me enough for the damages, then I'm happy to help feed your deer and your elk. Instead, the price that they were paying him at the time was not substantial at all. Wasn't even enough to make up the fences or the hay bales broke. They ended up making a fence. The state paid for a fence all the way around the perimeter of the property. And where'd the deer go? There. I think there's a lot of producers that are way happy to help grow deer and elk that aren't necessarily looking for the funding to do something else. Also, in my dad's circumstances, they're giving away depredation tags more than what he could fill the freezer with. I mean, at one point, it just feels like you're wasting. I think a lot of producers are for this, for that aspect of it. I think you asked some good questions, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thanks, Corey.
Oh no, Corey, I'm glad you said that because it reminded me of something else. Like Darren, I really appreciate the sentiment that we don't think we would use this for elk, but I mean, we just got an example right here in this region where we would. And again, how do we tell the guy in LaSalle's, yes, we'll pay for your elk, but someone up in the northern where we're way over objective, how do we confidently tell them, no, we won't pay for the elk on your property? We're actually kind of hoping for a bad winter and some of them die. Like, how do we sit back and confidently say that and say we're treating everyone the same? You know, if the rule doesn't back us up, can someone pressure us into it? I guess is what my main thing is. If the rule doesn't say it, can we be pressured to bend?
Any other comments? I'd just like to say that I do think that this is a great thing. I think it's going to help build tolerance for deer. Landowners will hopefully start looking at them as an asset, something they want to help build. That'll be kind of the indirect result. I think the direct result is instead of issuing doe tags, it's going to have a direct impact to the deer herds. We can hopefully spend some money and save those deer. And if you look at the money we'll spend on fences and habitat projects and all this other stuff, this to me just seems like it falls right in line with everything else we spend money on to save deer. I guess I'm still talking. So if there's any other comments, if not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to accept as presented.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Matt and a second by Brad. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, 3-3. So, I'm terrible at counting. 4-3, is that what we are? Or was it 3-4? Those in favor, raise your hand again. Let's see it. Okay, 4. Wow, it's getting late. 4-3, motion passes. Before we adjourn tonight, I just want to make
I just want to hear what Charles.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. We have a few. I think I know.
I think you know mine.
Okay. We know why Cash is against it. I'd like to hear from you guys.
Well, I guess I would like to see some small game included in this because I feel like it's going to have an actual effect on growing animals that people want to hunt. I do see that the producers suffer loss from wildlife, but I also know that wildlife exists on the landscape. That's part of it. And then I also know that producers can charge a trespass fee and make up a significant amount of that loss in a trespass fee. So it just feels like, to me, it feels like if we're not including something like pheasants where we know we're going to see it increase because we're increasing the habitat, we're going to do it for deer, they can charge a trespass fee. We're going to give them money on top of the trespass fee they can charge. And then we're not going to allow public access through something like the walk-in access program. We are just bleeding money out. That's where I stand.
Thanks, Charles.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's too vague the way it's currently written. And I think we want flexibility in some portions of it, but then we change words to exclude dryland farm, to exclude pasture, to exclude all these things. And it's like, if we're going to have a rule that we can do this with landowners, why are we limiting ourselves and throwing tools away? So
seeing some expansion would be nice.
I really appreciate Charles bringing up the public access part of it, right? We have other tools like the conservation lease program other ways that public still gets to go hunt those species, and this provides no tool for that.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate your comments. Just a couple things before we adjourn. First, recognize Bob Christensen, who joined us, one of our wildlife board members. And then also, I just want to commend everybody in the audience. We talked about some really heated topics today. I feel like people were very passionate, but also professional. And I think that it's going to be well received, whether people are for or against what people had to say here. I think it's going to be well received because of the manner in which it was presented. So I want to thank everybody for that. And with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Can I thank Darren real quick? Thanks for covering all topics today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Darren's going to be short of breath. All right. I'm going to use this thing. Meeting adjourned.